I hate to mention these guys' names, but since they did sponsor the program, Ali Lamage and Eric Miche from Wild East. And sort of their competitor used to be Ulrich Bruckner from Coke DVDs. And we want to mention some authors too. First of all, Sir Christopher Frayling, Tony Williams and Lawrence Stagg, and Howard Hughes. And last but not least, one of our personal friends who's no longer with us is Don Bruce, who put a lot of the then and now photos together on the extended Sergio Leone DVD that came out a few years ago. And most importantly, the founder of the feast, John Antonio, for bringing us all together and making this idea an actual dream come true. John. When it came up that my name came up to do this panel, I started getting emails. And this is directed to all the, what I would consider spaghetti royalty. We have some of the best actors in the genre here today. From all your fans, we want to thank you for hours and hours of entertainment and enjoyment over the years.
Thank you for being
Thank you. Now, since John only has this place rented till 8 o'clock, we can't go and interview each one of these guys individually, which we'd like to. But you will have an opportunity to ask some questions so you can ask questions on specifics. So what we're going to do is ask some general questions and let them talk amongst themselves, and I'm sure we'll all be entertained and listen to some great stories. First of all, most people, younger guys, the older people, want to know what it was like living in Rome during those days of making films in Italy. Who wants? Richard, were you the longest one, the oldest one being there? I was going to say, I thought you were the one who'd been there the longest, earliest.
Oh, I guess I should use it. 61. I got there before you. I remember when you were.
I knew I was going to turn into this.
No, I'll tell you. People always ask.
Into the microphone, Richard.
I'm supposed to have a voice that carries. All right. Good, thank you. Anyway, people always ask me, which country you like the best and everything. I said, I loved Italy in the 60s and the beginning of the 70s. It was the most fantastic place I'd ever been. It was like a little child going to Disneyland. And I suppose we were there at the best time, but I mean, it was just, for me, it was fantastic because everything was wonderful. The people were wonderful, the food was wonderful, everybody treated us like royalty. I learned one thing though, when they say, tu sei più di un fratello per me, which means you're more than a brother to me, to watch out.
He's absolutely right. I can remember getting the feeling that the national game amongst the Italian movie makers is who you can screw the most, who is closest to you.
Let's hope it was Sophia Loren.
Yeah. But Richard is right. It was a magic time. It was such a magic time that I wrote a novel about it called The Magnificent Strangers, and because we were treated like magnificent strangers. We were bigger than life, the American actors. The people loved us. They really admired us. Most of the guys, we all knew one another and kind of hung out together. One of the differences I remember between here and there, or between the Americans and the Italians, is if a film role came up and an Italian couldn't do it, he wouldn't tell anyone. But if a film role came up and an American couldn't do it, he'd call another American. We were very close knit that way. And that's all I have to say, Mark.
Richard, I think it's kind of interesting, and I think,
I'm sorry.
are you Mark?
No, I'm calling, exactly.
Hunt, go first, because I can wait.
No, I just want to reiterate what they were all saying in a way, that we all know about the world called La Dolce Vita, and it was a wonderful movie, and it was truly the life that we lived there was La Dolce Vita. It changed my entire life, the whole way I lived, the whole way I thought about life, because the Italians taught me one thing: they work at play, and they play at work. The most important thing to the Italian is this moment right now, when we're all sitting here. I may forget who you are 20 minutes later, you'll forget who I am, but this moment to them, the moment now is the most important thing. And that's, I learned a lot from them about that, enjoying the moment of the work, of lunch, mangiati, or whatever. It was truly La Dolce Vita, and I miss it very much, I really do, as I'm sure you guys do too. Yes, yeah. They miss us and we miss them.
I want to talk about a couple of things I learned in Italy. First of all, when I first went there, of course, I didn't speak the language at all. And I kept hearing people talking about Louis. And I said, I said, my God, there are so many Italians called Louis. It's just amazing. It took me some weeks to find out that just means him. I also learned about appointments. You know, as actors, most of us started in America, and an actor has to be very punctual. If you have an appointment at 3 o'clock, you're there 10 minutes to 3 to make certain that you don't keep anybody waiting. Well, when I would go on appointments, I would say, they'd say, well, come in, you know, let's meet. I said, fine, when? Nel pomeriggio, which means in the afternoon. I said, any particular time? He says, sì, nel pomeriggio. And so what I found was they never really respected appointments as such. It's when they felt like seeing you, no matter how long you were hanging around, they would do it. But I think one of the things that we should all talk about is how we all started in Westerns. And I'll tell you very briefly how I started. I had been acting in America for some years, and I'd never ridden a horse in my life. I went to Italy to do a film which was canceled, and I was stuck there. Then I went off to do a picture called The Longest Day in Paris. And I met a guy, a director named Sergio Corbucci, who said, you did The Longest Day, right? I said, see. He said, why don't you come and do a picture for me? I said, see. I said, what's the name of the picture? He says, The Shortest Day. It was a spoof on The Longest Day. So today I believe that I'm the only actor in the world who appeared in both The Longest Day and The Shortest Day. But Corbucci and I became friends. And he was a great director, a good fun comedy director. All of us here know, of course, who Sergio Corbucci was. And one day he said, look, I'm going to do Western. He said, why don't you do it? I said, well, I've never ridden a horse before. He says, you learn. I says, well, you know, Western heroes are usually tall and blonde. And I said, I'm not tall and I'm not blonde. He says, it doesn't matter. I said, well, why do you want me? He says, you're American. I says, that's the only reason? He says, I like you, but you're American. Because at that time, what you had to have was American names as stars in Westerns, because they figured that if they had an American name, whether he was a big name or not, as long as it was American, they could sell the movies to America. Well, shortly after that, they learned that that was not necessarily the case. But you'll see so many Italian actors, all who have American names, and even some Americans. Robert Wood, do you have an American name? Richard, I think you have an American name. Brett. But I mean, that was it. That's how I started. I had never done a Western before, never ridden a horse before. I became a Western star because simply I had an American name.
How did I like Italy? I love Italy. I still love Italy. And the reason I love it, and the film industry there, is that it was collaborative. The one thing I didn't like about American filmmaking in general was that everything is segregated, and you move a light for a grip and he'll kill you. There, everybody collaborates to do a film. It's granted a low-budget film, but still we all sort of work together to get a good result. That really, every time I left a film after 8 weeks of work or 10 weeks of work, I felt like weeping, because these are some people that I wouldn't maybe see again, and we were a family. We had become a family. That's what I liked about Italy, and the food and a lot of other things, but mainly the collaborative spirit. How I got in it, I was working in the theater in Paris. I was doing Chekhov's Cherry Orchard on the Quai d'Orsay at the American Theater. And a producer came to see it and offered me a movie. At the time, I thought I was a theater actor, so I said, no, not really, I pass. The next day, he came with 5 pictures, a contract for 5 pictures, with money that I could only dream. So I said yes. And that's how I began. I went to Barcelona and did, actually, the year before Eastwood arrived, did the first Western there at Balcaza Studios when they first opened it. So. But if you ever have a chance to go to Europe, the lifestyle is so much healthier. That's all I could say. I love America. I'm American, but I'm telling you, the way they live life there is the way we all should live life.
Yeah, Mike, come on. How did you get in the Westerns? I'll tell you how I got in, but you tell me yours first.
Or you tell me. I went to Italy in '68. There was a film that was going to be done, and I thought if I was there, I'd have a good chance of getting it. It was 100 Rifles with Raquel Welch, Jim Brown, yeah. And as luck would have it, I was on that film for 3 months. We shot it in Spain, and that was the beginning of my career in Italy. Prior to that, though, I started working in dubbing, and I did an awful lot of dubbing. We called it dubbage in those days. We did the best we could at the time, and
all the films were dubbed.
Everything was dubbed. Everything was dubbed. Unlike what we know here, everything is done in direct sound. But there in Italy, and everything was done on what they called a dirty track. It didn't matter what kind of noise or anything else that was on the track, because they were going to dub it anyway, and dub it in many languages. Most of the time I was dubbing in English. And we had a group there called the English Language Dubbing Association. I would like to call attention to somebody in this audience who was the president of ELDA, as we called it, English Language Dubbing Association, who also did an awful lot of films there. I want to acknowledge him, George Brown. Stand up. A wonderful actor, also a wonderful dubber. In fact, I think he dubbed me in a film. I was doing something somewhere. Saved me in a film. There he is. Thank you. You probably did. There's no question about that. But I mean, many times we'd do a film, and then we'd be contracted to do another film, and about that time they were going to put it into English or into a clean track, whatever. And if I wasn't available, somebody else would do it. Now, I did a couple of films that I've heard the voice on it. I will tell you, they're awful. The voices that they put on me, I sound like, I don't know what I sound like, but it's not what I would have liked to have heard. You know, everybody thinks, well, I have this wonderful voice, this melodious voice, and so forth and so on, and you always think that's the way it's going to come off. Well, many times you kind of kid yourself into believing that. Anyway, I did a lot of films in in Italy, not just Westerns, but do the sword and sandal type of thing. A couple of what they call gialli, which means cops and robbers type of films. Did a lot of those. So it was, somebody once asked me, he said, what was it like to be in Italy for 10 years? I said, I was on a party for 10 years. I really was. It was like being on a party. If you weren't playing, as I played a lot of tennis and golf in those days, you were working or you were having a few drinks and dinner and so forth. So it was a wonderful time.
I do stick out because I'm a German actor, but and I.
We'll W later.
Perfect. I actually met Duccio Tesari privately, and he said, "I'm looking for somebody like you." That was for The Bastard with Juliana Gemma and Rita Hayworth, and I was 6 weeks on the film, and from then on I just carried on and did 22 spaghetti westerns. And just work all the time, and but I'm a veteran actor now. I finally became a principal actor. It took a long time, but I got there.
I'd like to say just a few words about some of the people I know here, like Mark Damon. Mark was already a well-known actor in Hollywood, and when he came out, I remember he was always somebody who studied the camera, studied and knew the people, and not only that, but you made money doing crossword puzzles, which to me is the most incredible thing in the world, even the ones in England. But he became a big producer. From being a fine actor, he became a big producer, which, if anybody knows anything about producing, that's not the easiest job in the world. I did a few films, and believe me, I learned that I'm not a producer. But Brett Halsey, Brett also, he did a big TV series, 20th Century Fox, and it was very well known, actually. And then, of course, if I don't mind, Mark, if I say to you that you were a fine actor and you didn't say much about your career in Hollywood. I mean, you were already doing very, very, very well when you came out. You were very well known in Hollywood before you came out to Italy, and you did very well there too. You did some very important films. So these are 3 people I knew beforehand, and I must say, I don't know about you, Robert, but I felt very intimidated by all 3 of them.
I'm not intimidated by anything. I walked into Schwab's when Schwab's used to exist, and I saw this figure of a guy walk in. He had his collar up, he had on a white jacket and had black hair and piercing blue eyes, and I said, God, if I could be gay, I guess it would be now. And that was Brett Halsey. God, he was beautiful.
You know, I just wanted to follow up on this dubbing issue. The very first picture I did in Italy, I had a character who I decided to give an Irish accent, which was not easy for me, but I thought it would help the character. And so I worked weeks on perfecting my accent. And I remember the first day I had a big speech. I was walking and talking, and I had it down pat. I had worked really 4 nights on it. And I couldn't wait to start, and I started walking and talking and talking and walking, and suddenly I realized that there was no boom. There was no recorder. I said, stop, because I didn't really speak Italian at that time. I was just starting to learn. I said, where's the sound? And the guy looks at me like I'm crazy. I said, where's the sound? And they explained it to the director, who didn't speak English, and he said, tell the boy to relax. He said, we do all the dubbing afterwards. We don't care what he sounds like. and you know, like Mr. Forrest over there said, the worst thing is when you can't dub yourself. I told you I did this picture that some of you might have seen before.
Wait a minute, Mark.
What?
I dubbed you once, and your performance was beautiful. The voice.
I have nothing to say. I think you're lying. But I mean, when we got a chance really to dub ourselves, the performances were so different. I mean, I was magnificent today, really, because it was my own voice, right? No, I'm kidding. but wait, I was in that film. Was that you in that film?
I was beating up at you, I think.
Wait a second. I had the first film of the day. When was your film?
It was just before yours.
But you have to say one thing, which they haven't said. The Italian dubbers were so fantastic. I mean, they could dub anybody. I loved Italy too, because I could see Russian films, Polish films, any film in Italian, and if it was Woody Allen, he sounded like Woody Allen. Cary Grant, they were fantastic. And I really miss that. I miss not seeing all the foreign films. We're missing, in America, we're missing so many wonderful films that they can see in Europe and other parts of the world.
It's interesting how I got to Rome was, and became Hunt Powers, was for a phone call that I made. I was on my way home. I lived in Beverly Hills at the time, at the Laurel Canyon, and I was on my way home, and at that time there were no cell phones. I'm not talking about the silent days. So I stopped off. My agent at that time was Paul Kohner, and I said, I just called to see if anything was going on. He said, well, there's an Italian director here named Franco Giraldi. He's been in New York for 3 weeks, and he's looking for somebody to star in 3 Western films, and he can't find anybody. If you want to stop by. I was there in like 10 minutes. And by that time, Franco Giraldi had seen some of my stuff that I had done, Detectives with Robert Taylor and a few other television shows. And it was an instant communication that I had with Franco. We spoke very, very little English, but we instantly had a connection. And he said to me, Hunt, because I was Hunt then, he said, Hunt, do you ride the horse? And I said, I've been an equestrian for a long time, yes, right. I had never been on a horse in my life. So he said, but you shoot a gun? I said, yes, Franco. See, as a matter of fact, I've won several prizes in sharpshooting. I've never had a gun in my hand in my life or ridden a horse. But there was something about the meeting between the two of us, and he said, can you be in Rome in 2 weeks at Cinecittà? And I said, yes, I can. He said, I only have one thing. He said, I never make a decision without my wife. And he said, we're leaving for Rome tonight. We're at the Beverly Wilshire Hotel. Would you mind coming by? Because I cannot finalize it until she said yes. So I went to the Beverly Wilshire Hotel, knocked on the door, and this gorgeous blonde woman opened the door, and she said, Madonna, e lui, e Sugarcoat. Sugarcoat was the film that I wanted to star in. And it was instant like that. So they left. Next day I called a friend of mine who worked at John Wayne's ranch, and I said, you've got to teach me how to get on the horse to begin with. And you've got to teach me how to shoot a gun. Well, I did arrive in Cinecittà 2 weeks later with my own gun and my own holster. And when they saw Hunt Powers walk on the set, about 300 extras on the set, they didn't know who the hell I was. But the fact that I had my own holster and my own gun, they were very, very impressed with that. That's how I got to Rome. It was a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful experience, all because of a phone call that I just had an impulse to do. So when you have an impulse, and you have something, don't flinch. Just do it. You never can tell what'll happen. Changed my entire life.
Well,
We're waiting for questions.
waiting for another question? I'm sure all of you, one of the reasons that you were hired, besides being excellent actors, was the fact that you guys could do your own stunt work. Any stories about bad stunts that came off or incidents?
Oh, yes.
Richard?
I admired the stuntmen, especially in Italy. And I became friends with the stuntmen probably more than the other actors because they were, I don't know, they were just easy. And there was no ego among them, and they were really the best I knew. And so, since I didn't have to do any stunts, and it's a stupid thing for an actor to do stunts, I promise you. Because Well, I'm sure we've all been to a hospital. We've been in a hospital and many times, and there were people there paid to be the stuntmen. But I had to, you know, that's the reason people join the army at 18. Anyway, I was doing some things, and I ended up many times in the hospital, and I saw a lot of people killed, because in those days, I think you all know that they really didn't have very many safety precautions for us. And I remember one film, they had a hatchet, for example, and they said, go and throw it to this mob. So I ran, and I stopped with a hatchet like that, and the director said, what are you doing? I said, I can't go any further. He said, why not? I said, because I can't throw the hatchet. And he said, why not? They're only extras. Another time, I'd ask, because I don't happen to like guns very much. I mean, I respect them, but I don't like to play with them. And many times we'd have extras on the set, and they'd be playing around with guns like children. And I asked the people if they'd please take the guns away from them, because I didn't want them to get hurt. And he told me to mind my own business. And just then, I heard a loud bang and a scream. One of the extras looked in there, and he wanted to see what it looked like to shoot a blank. It just blew his face out. Then we had people dying, helicopter crashes, and people had fire go all over them and burned. And a lot of people on horses, people didn't know how to ride. They'd tighten up on the horse like that. Smash them and break their noses and things like that. And so it was, I don't know if I can say, but I think because when we're young, we do a lot of foolish things. And I think you knew better in Hollywood, I think, as you grew up in Hollywood as an actor, and I think I was still kind of wet behind the ears. And if I had to do it over again, believe me, I would not be doing any stunts. I'd leave it up to the stuntmen, and just go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to say Sergio Corbucci lost one eye in 1971 because he was too close to the camera, and the shooters came close by, and he lost one eye. But he still made good films.
It was tough. I remember how they used to have horses fall. These days, you know, they have ways to just bend down and pull the horse's cab just a bit. He trips, and it's very well done. Then they just put a wire across. Yeah, and so the horse would really stumble, break legs and everything. It was the beginning, really, of stunt work, because I think the westerns and the sword and sandals and so on was the beginning of real stunt work in Italy, and it was very in its initial stages. And like Richard said, I think every single picture I did that was an action picture, I was hurt in. And one of the reasons, again, stupidly, was because I wanted to show the crews that I was macho enough that I could do some of my own stuff. Being just a mediocre athlete, I pushed myself to be as good as I could and to show them what I could do. Well, I did a picture for Dino called Anzio. And the scene starts with this soldier, me, on a chandelier on the top, swinging back and forth with soldiers below, throwing fake cans of beer and so at him. So Dino says to me, he says, Mark, he says, you want a stunt man to do it? He said, if so, I can't get close-ups on you. So I said, no, close-ups are important. So I said, no, I'll do it. And I was swinging back and forth in the chandelier. And of course, what happened was they were supposed to be tossing these little light plastic things at me. Well, there were a lot of extras. There's a star up there. Fuck him. See you later. And they were throwing heavy cans of beer. And I got hit with one and it really hurt. I finally got down, and but I was going to be okay. The next day, we're storming the beach of Anzio, and somebody.
You got a job?
So we're storming the beach of Anzio, and Eddie Dimitrick was directing the picture, and he said, Mark, he said, we have to do it again. You've got to lift your head up. You have a helmet on. I can't see your face. So I said, okay. Son again? And he says, Mark, he said, I can't see your face. You've got to lift your head up. I said, Eddie, I'm trying to, but this helmet seems so heavy. I can't seem to lift. Well, they took me to the doctor and found I had a fractured vertebrae from that. Can of beer? From the can of beer that hit me. I tell you, I think every single action picture I did, I got hurt. And it was stupid because I was trying to do so many of my own stunts. And I wish I had your advice beforehand.
One thing, we always thought because we were Americans, we were superior. And we could do these stunts better than the stuntmen, except for when I started off doing the sword fighting pictures, they were masters with the sword. But when we got to the Westerns, we could do things, especially if we'd ridden before, that they couldn't. And it was the youth. We had to show off, do things, and I was hurt as often as you. I didn't get a broken neck though. But I could do that. I remember once I had this scene where I had to run in front of a train. The bad guys were chasing me and I had to run. And I didn't have to do it, but I can do it. And then when I saw it in the dailies, it could have been my wife. The character was so small. It was just so dumb.
I forgot to say one thing, Mark. We're both left-handed. And when you're left-handed in Italy, they bring you a holster on the right side, even though you tell them, I'm left-handed, I'm left-handed. Oh yeah, don't worry about it, right? You know how hard it was when we were left-handed? Because we threw everybody off, because in Italy, I don't think anyone was left-handed except us. Mancini.
They call him Mancino,
Yeah.
which means clumsy.
It's true, it's true. But I mean, that was really a big problem we had, being left-handed. And we had to really fight. I'm sure maybe sometimes they gave you the wrong side too, and sometimes you had to fight, but it didn't work. And they just didn't want to understand.
The sword fighting was the toughest thing.
I know.
With the left hand.
I know, because they weren't used to doing it with left-handed, even the stuntmen. And you'd look at the eyes, and you'd see the eyes all of a sudden. They say, all right, you ready? We do our left parting, no problem. And then all of a sudden, the eyes, they said, just by action, I saw the eyes get black and a big thing there. And I said, shit, I'm going to the hospital again. That was it. Right back to the hospital.
As I told you, I did all my own stunts. And I did have a couple of really very close calls. But in general, I did them because I was 6'5", and what do you do, there are no doubles my size in Italy, so basically one stunt that I did was we blocked a fight scene, and there were cameramen had a handheld camera with the camera guard, and he forgot to pull back when I got hit, and I spun into the camera guard and split my lip open. I had to finish that film 3/4, never showing a full face close-up. That was one of the stunts. I've had so many close calls. I fell off a water wheel and 7 guns from the McGregor's on my back. I thought I was going to break my back. Just some really awful stuff, but I loved it. I mean, the honest truth is, it was fun. All of this stuff was all the make-believe we do when we're children. It's just always there, and that's basically what we all did, I guess. Played cowboys and Indians, cowboys and cowboys,
There was one other thing that somebody said, that when we were in Italy, I don't know how you felt, Mike, but there were some fantastic Italian actors there, and they weren't working very much. And I mean, really good actors. And there again, I was embarrassed, because I thought, we're lucky. We came over from America, and they've given us these parts. But some of the actors were really fine actors and became big superstars later on when they got rid of us. And but I mean, there are really some great actors in Italy, and if they could have spoken English, they would have been international stars for sure. But that's life.
The head of the Italian Actors Union was the daughter of Victoria De Sica, I think. And she said the union was calling a strike because Italian actors couldn't get work if they couldn't act in English.
Yes, it's true. But
now an American actor can't
I have-
unless you speak Italian. Because we're not doing guide tracks anymore, you know. It's amazing.
But the daughter was called Emi Di Sica, and then she became an agent. And I got works for her. You see that how it works.
Anything else? Okay,
Tom,
we're gonna do that, go ahead.
Tom,
Yes,
here I am,
where are you?
right here.
Oh, I'm Jack, Uncle Jack, I'm sorry.
And you know why that's funny? Because his name is Tom Betts, and my name is Jack Betts. And the coincidence that we are both on stage at the same time, we don't know each other, we think we're related, we're not quite sure if
Not directly related, at least.
Anyway, it's just, it's fun, and thank you very much for being here. I really appreciate it, and it's great being with you guys again. It really is, it brings back wonderful, wonderful memories of a great time, right, Mike? Yes, Mike, wake up, wake up.
I went to sleep for a while.
Thank you, and John, thank you most of all for bringing
you're
this
welcome.
whole thing together. It's just wonderful what he's done.
I wanna,
Absolutely wonderful, just wonderful.
This is a dream come true for me, because I started Westerns All Italiana, not started, but started working with it in 1982, when a lot of you guys, I didn't know who you were. You were making films in Italy. And in those days, we had video, and video was very expensive, and I got involved because of the music. And as the music, I bought LPs, I got Richard Harrison's name. Who's Richard Harrison? Mark Damon I knew, but Robert Woods I didn't know. Hunt Powers, who's Hunt Powers? Brett Halsey I knew because he was an American actor, and of course Michael. Dan Van Husen, I still don't know who he is. But, that's the way it goes. But anyways, this is a dream come true to have all you guys here in one spot, and I know you've all had experiences and know each other pretty well. But thank you very much for being here. I want to throw a couple of names out of actors. There's one that I won't mention because Uncle Jack told me not to. But some of these people
I'll go ahead.
I'll do it at the end. That way, if Jack gets up and walks out, it's over. How about Gordon Mitchell? I mean, Richard knows him.
We all love
Brett
him.
knows him. You all know him.
Love
Yeah.
him, love him.
Right.
He was the meanest looking man in the world with the baby's
Deepest heart.
He
Yes.
was the spaghetti western minister.
Yeah.
We were always together, and the few films I produced, I always put Gordon in them. And I'll tell you, Gordon was always there on time. He was always, everybody loved him. I don't care what country we were in. It just was great.
Gordon Mitchell came out of an act with Jane Mansfield.
Right. In Vegas.
And came to Europe.
I have to add one other thing about Gordon. Gordon was a guy who loved to eat. And we would go out to restaurants, and we would finish a full meal, then he would see a plate go by, and he says, hey, I want one of those. They would bring it over, he ate it, he would excuse himself, he'd come back 2 minutes later, and he saw another plate go by, he says, I want that too. And then he excused himself again, and I found out what he kept doing was he kept ordering more, vomiting, and yeah, it's the Roman way.
You know, there's one thing driving here, and I was talking to my son Sebastian, and Gordon was like his godfather, and we were both agreeing that Gordon had one of those great, great faces, and if he had had a manager or somebody who told him exactly how to behave and act, I think Gordon would have been a really well-known actor all over the world. I know. I know. Yeah. All right. Of course, we're not going to pay you, Gordon.
Yeah. Right.
We'll pay you in cambiali.
That's another question that comes up in talking to you guys too, is the fact that how many of you had problems getting paid or never got paid at all for a film? Yeah, most of us have figured. Yeah, I know, Brett, that's why you went over there and never got paid for that first one, right? On the Ringo movie?
Well, I went over contract to do 3 films, and I got paid, although I didn't have
Yeah. They would offer something called cambiali, which we all know about. And I said, well, cambiali means you're supposed to pay at a certain time. That's what it's
Promissory note.
It's a promissory note. And I said, but what happens, you don't have the money to pay me now. What happens if you don't have the money then? He says, well, you just sue us.
And by then, they changed their company name.
That's
4
right.
times, so
No longer
everybody
business.
gets- But getting paid in Cambiale was all right if you had a mafia friend. That's all I can say.
I did well as an actor until I decided to produce. And unlike Mark, who is a fine producer and a big producer, I didn't know what I was doing, and I believed and trusted people, and that's when I did start getting cambiales. You have like 12 zones, right? In Italy, for example.
And 3 days.
Well, yeah. No, but they would take and they would give you cambiales. They say, you need to ask people. Oh, yes, they're all right. Of course, I'd always be the first person they never paid. And my wife, Francesca, she said one time when she was at the office, she heard them laughing about how they put it over on me and paid me in cambiale. You know, believe me, I never blamed anybody. I said, hey, it's experience, and I shouldn't be a producer. It's much harder. I think the easiest thing in the world in this business was being an actor. I don't care if you're a bad actor, what you're an actor, if they like you. I would like to have been a Shakespearean actor, and I certainly couldn't be that. And I'd like to work for some of some of the biggest directors in Italy, and I never got to do that. So I made them, and actually, we were doing, as I said, we were all making good money, and there was these wonderful actors there who were not making money, and they were not working, and it was rather embarrassing, you have to admit. Didn't you feel a little embarrassed by it? By some of the great Mark! I think he answered my question. No, but there was really DeSicas and some of the really great directors, they weren't even working that much then. God, I would have given anything. I'd have worked for free for them. Without even thinking about it. But no. Once you get a name of let's say an action actor or whatever you want to call it, you are typed here. You're right here, and you're not going to get out of that. It works for, I guess at that time it worked on the world, but if you really wanted to do something a little bit more, whether you have that talent or not, but we all want to do more than maybe our talent will allow us to, but I really wanted to work for some of these great directors, because you have a great director and you'll end up with a very good actor. I tell you something, there was I've seen it. I've seen always some actors were mediocre, but when that great director got them, they were great actors. And we worked, I have to say, sometimes some of the directors we worked for, they really shouldn't have been directors. They shouldn't have.
But on the other hand, we all worked for B directors who had like the actors, had they not got stuck in the B's, they would be doing A pictures, because I worked with some really, really talented directors who were stuck.
May I ask you one thing? Did they work more with the camera or did they work with the actor? Because most of them I know liked working with, Margheriti was wonderful. He worked with special effects, he worked everything, but I don't think he thought much about the actor.
Very few. You're not microphoning it, you're not reaching.
Well, they can hear. I have a little stronger voice than you.
Theater actor.
No, I wish.
Are there any questions from the audience?
Mike Shields, Soap Magazine. How are you all doing? Would any of you come out of retirement, and if so, for why?
Well, retirement from what?
I personally.
Absolutely. Retire
None of them
from
have ever
what?
retired.
Life would retire.
If you will do a Western.
Yes.
Yes.
You would do another Western?
No.
No.
Not
Yes.
any acting.
Yeah.
I just did one.
Quentin
last time.
Tarantino's making one right now.
I feel we were lucky enough to have a nice career. I say leave well enough alone.
Just a question. I understand that Brett, both you and Dan were just finished filming on the Scarlet War, the Western. I'm just wondering if you know of a release date. I know it's going direct to DVD, but I was wondering if there's going to be a release date, if you know when it's coming up.
I would say 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
I have no idea, because no one has told me anything.
question. What do you guys think was why the genre ended?
What?
The genre ended.
Why did it?
Oh,
Yes.
That's very easy. First of all, and this is my feeling, I think Mark will know more about that than me, but I think that the Americans were coming over and they were really being ripped off a lot of times. I mean, I'm talking about millions of dollars. They'd come over and they were being, people, after American production came over, the people there, the small people working in films there, were producing their own films. and also, it's times change, and it was the great moment in history.
I think the genre ended basically because you could make westerns very cheaply and sell them very, very well overseas and make a lot of money. And so what happened was 80% of the production in Italy at that time were western or action pictures, and people just got tired of them. There was just too much. The quality was worse and worse and worse. There were just so many different ways to tell a western. And in about, I think it was about 1970, 71, I wasn't getting any more offers for any kind of picture. And they said, well, you can't do another kind of picture. You're Capelloni. Capelloni means a big 10-gallon hat. And the fact was, we were all typed as that, and when the genre died, most of us had to seek other areas. I actually quit acting and went into distribution and then producing because we couldn't make any money because we were typecast as westerns. Now suddenly it's all come back, and spaghetti westerns are considered some of the great classic stories that are now being told in so many different ways. But I don't think the western as such will ever come back like it was in the 60s and early 70s.
It'll always linger, but it will not come back as strong. There are westerns being made now. I got an email the other day from a guy in Spain who's doing a western in Almeria. So, yeah. So they're still doing the genre, but as I said after my film, Tarantino changed the whole face of everything by using his influence. The spaghetti influence was all in Tarantino's work. This kind of genre still works, whether it's modern or it's Western. So they're still doing this, but not in great volumes as they were in the 60s, in the heyday of the golden era,
Well,
Yes, ma'am.
yes. Okay, I wanted to say something. My name is Dan Van Husen, and I think something is happening to me. They're starting to make remakes of some of the spaghetti westerns. And I do this year the first remake of a western called Cutthroat 9 with Harvey Keitel, and it's going to be filmed in Canada. Then at the same time, I'm probably talking about that western by Danny Garcia, Dollars for Hell, which is done in Almeria also. I think in November, December. So that's doing westerns again, thanks God. But it doesn't mean I'm a western actor. I can do anything.
Yeah, I've got a question.
Go ahead.
I just want to thank Robert for spending an hour with me talking about our kids, school, playing sports.
My
And
pleasure,
for Brett
man.
Halsey clearing up your
That's what it's
co-stars
about.
on Follow the Sun. And I wanted to follow up with a question with Mark regarding the lack of timeliness on the part of the Italian business community. Over the years, did you see an evolution when you moved from acting into distributing and producing? Did you find that the character of the Italian businessman changed, and were they perhaps more timely, or was it still, there's $20 million on the table, come by and see me sometime in the afternoon? Did it evolve to where it would be an American concept of time?
That's tough for me to answer because I moved away from Italy in '73 and really started my producing career about 5-6 years later. But the answer is yes. they're not quite as happy-go-lucky as they were in those days. They are far more business-oriented because what's happened is there's been a consolidation, and only the most serious producers have successful productions, and they're serious because they are paying more attention to this. I think that was something that came out of the whole La Dolce Vita feeling. And yes, because I deal with Italians all the time right now as a distributor of our films, I think the attitude has changed quite a bit. It will never be like our attitude, but it shouldn't be. You know, they are Italians, but they're certainly more business-like today, as I know them, than they were in those days. Yes.
Mark, will you tell them some of the films that you produced, please, for me? Pretty big films.
Well, I produced about 70 films. Probably my favorite is a picture called Das Boot, which received 6 Oscar nominations for the first time in history for a foreign language picture. I made a picture about 5 years ago that finally got us an Oscar. My pictures, I counted them yesterday. They received 10 nominations, but we had 1 win with a picture called Monster, Charlize Theron. And oh my gosh, so many pictures. I did Short Circuit, I did 9.5 Weeks, The Musketeer, Rudyard Kipling's The Jungle Book.
Never-ending Story.
The Never-Ending Story, I forgot, yeah. And I recently completed 2 pictures, one with Patrick Dempsey and Ashley Judd, directed by a really good director named Rob Minkoff and written by the guys who wrote Hangover, called Flypaper, and that's going to be coming out shortly. And I was invited to Sundance, and I just had another picture in Sundance called The Ledge with Patrick Wilson and Charlie Hunnam and Terrence Howard and Liv Tyler. And both those pictures are going to be released theatrically this year. So I've been very busy, and I'm about to start a picture with Nick Cage in about 4 months. And I have Universal Soldier 4 going with Dolph Lundgren and Jean-Claude Van Damme again. So I think I'm working harder than I ever worked now. But thank you for asking.
Okay, we'll wrap it up.
I got some respect. My God.
We'll wrap it up, and anybody can talk to them out in the lobby. Again, thank you so much for being here, guys. Thanks for all the entertainment for years and years.